The conference room on the 47th floor was silent except for the scratch of fountain pens on paper. 12 executives sat around a glass table, ready to sign the biggest deal in the company's history. $4.2 billion. Retirement money. Legacy money. The kind of deal that changes everything. The CEO stood at the head of the table, his hand hovering over the contract, when suddenly the door burst open. A man in a janitor's uniform stood there, out of breath, his cleaning cart abandoned in the hallway. "Please," he said, his voice shaking. "Don't sign that deal." Every head turned. Every jaw dropped. What happened next would become the story that changed an entire corporation, and reminded everyone in that room what truly matters in life. Before we continue with this incredible story, I want to invite you to join our Kindness World family. If stories like this one touch your heart and remind you of the good that still exists in this world, please hit that subscribe button and ring the bell so you never miss a moment of inspiration. Drop a like if you believe in the power of kindness, and leave a comment telling us about a time when someone's compassion changed your life. Now, let's get back to what happened in that boardroom. Marcus Thompson had been cleaning offices at Hartwell Industries for 7 years. Every night, from 9 p.m. until 5 in the morning, he mopped floors, emptied trash cans, and wiped down desks in a building where the people who worked there barely noticed he existed. He was invisible. Just another face in a blue uniform pushing a cart through carpeted hallways. But Marcus didn't mind being invisible. He had something more important to focus on. His daughter, Sophie. Sophie was 12 years old and the entire reason Marcus got up every day. Her mother had passed away when Sophie was just 4, leaving Marcus to raise her alone. He worked the night shift so he could be there when Sophie got home from school, help her with homework, make her dinner, and tuck her in before heading to his job. It was exhausting. There were days when Marcus felt like he was drowning, when the weight of being both mother and father pressed down so hard he could barely breathe. But then Sophie would smile at him, or show him a drawing she made, or tell him about something she learned that day, and suddenly everything made sense again. The reason Marcus burst into that boardroom wasn't about the deal itself. It was about what he'd overheard 3 nights earlier while cleaning the office of Robert Chen, the company's chief financial officer. Marcus had been emptying the trash when he heard voices in the hallway. 2 executives were talking, and they didn't realize anyone was listening. They were discussing the $4.2 billion merger with Stellman Corp., laughing about how the due diligence had been rushed, how certain environmental reports had been conveniently overlooked, how the factory they were acquiring had been dumping chemicals into the water supply of a small town in Ohio for years. They talked about how it would take at least 3 years before anyone noticed, and by then, the executives would have their bonuses and be long gone. Marcus had frozen with the trash bag in his hand. His blood ran cold. He thought about Sophie, about all the other children in that town in Ohio who were drinking poisoned water. He thought about the parents who had no idea their kids were in danger. For 3 days, he tried to figure out what to do. Who would listen to a janitor? Who would believe him? He thought about staying silent, about minding his own business, about protecting the job that allowed him to take care of his daughter. But on that 4th night, Marcus made a decision. He thought about what he would want someone to do if Sophie was in danger. He thought about the kind of man he wanted to be, the kind of father he wanted his daughter to see when she looked at him. And so, when he saw the executives gathering in the conference room, when he saw the CEO about to sign papers that would seal the deal, Marcus did something he'd never done before. He stepped out of the invisible space he occupied and made himself seen. "Sir," Marcus said, his voice steadier now as every eye in the room fixed on him. "I clean Mr. Chen's office. 3 nights ago, I heard 2 executives talking about environmental violations at the Stellman factory. They said there are contaminated water reports that were hidden. There are children drinking that water right now." The room erupted. Executives started talking over each other. Security was called. Someone demanded Marcus be fired immediately. But the CEO, A man named David Hartwell, whose grandfather had founded the company, held up his hand. The room fell silent. He looked at Marcus, really looked at him, perhaps for the first time, even though Marcus had been cleaning his office for 7 years. "What's your name?" David asked. "Marcus Thompson, sir." "And you have a family, Marcus?" "A daughter. She's 12. David nodded slowly. Then he turned to his legal team. "I want every document related to this merger on my desk in 1 hour. I want independent environmental consultants brought in immediately. And I want to know exactly what we're buying." He looked around the room at the shocked faces of his executives. "This deal is postponed until we know the truth." The investigation took 2 weeks. Marcus was right. The factory had been illegally dumping industrial waste for 8 years. The water in the nearby town showed dangerous levels of contamination. Children had been getting sick. Families had been suffering. And Stellman Corp had been hiding it all, planning to make it Hartwell's problem after the deal closed. David Hartwell didn't just cancel the deal. He reported Stellman Corp to federal authorities. He personally visited the affected town and committed company resources to help with the cleanup, even though Hartwell Industries had no legal obligation to do so. And then he did something else. He called Marcus into his office. "You risked your job to do the right thing," David said. "You could have stayed silent. Nobody would have blamed you. But you spoke up for people you've never met, children you'll never know. That takes a kind of courage that's rare in this world." He paused. "I'm creating a new position in this company. Director of Ethics and Community Relations. The job is yours if you want it. It comes with a salary, benefits, and tuition assistance. I understand your daughter is bright. She deserves every opportunity." Marcus stood there, tears streaming down his face. He thought about all the nights he'd cleaned these offices, invisible and overlooked. He thought about Sophie and the future that had just opened up before them. But most of all, he thought about the families in Ohio who would never know his name, but whose children would grow up healthy because one person decided that doing the right thing mattered more than staying silent. Kindness isn't always convenient. It isn't always safe. Sometimes it requires us to step out of the shadows and risk everything we have for people we'll never meet. But that's exactly what makes it so powerful. Marcus Thompson taught everyone in that boardroom something they'd forgotten in their pursuit of billion-dollar deals. He reminded them that we're all connected, that our choices ripple outward in ways we can't always see, and that sometimes the quietest voice in the room is the one we need to hear the most. Today, Marcus still works at Hartwell Industries, but now he spends his days making sure the company lives up to its values. And Sophie? She's in college now, studying environmental science, inspired by the father who showed her that one person's courage can change everything. Let this story remind you that kindness isn't just about grand gestures. It's about speaking up when it's hard, standing up when it costs something, and believing that doing the right thing always matters, even when nobody's watching. Be the voice. Be the courage. Be the change.